Hello and welcome to the Brew Hoop podcast. After several weeks away, some of us even spending those at sea, the Brew Hoop podcast crew has returned. Kyle Carr, Riley Feldman are joining me, Adam Paris, here to bring you all of the hot gossip about the Bucks offseason that is well underway after we all tragically had to watch the Toronto Raptors go on to defeat the Golden State Warriors, lick our wounds as Bucks fans, and try and pick up the pieces of what happened. But it seems like the corner has finally been turned. The next season is about to get going here. And before we get in and start talking about the incredible, riveting, just deliriously fun draft night for the Milwaukee Bucks, Kyle, I want to hear a little bit about your trip that you just took to Alaska. As I said, you're at sea, and I've never been there, and I'm genuinely curious about how fun it was.
Yeah, first of all, I didn't watch any 1 second of the NBA Finals, which I couldn't bring myself to do because I was so emotionally scarred. So that was the best decision I made. Otherwise, the Alaskan cruise was nice. We spent it 3 days, and one city was Ketchikan, which is the salmon capital of the world, and it lived up to the hype. All the salmon in the world possible. It was delicious. Then we went to Juneau for whale watching. My wife and I did that. She's a big fan of whale watching. We saw five humpback whales, including one of them being like a baby humpback, which was really, really cool. I guess there's only been like two or three that have been seen in the last couple of years. But the spot that we went to, it was funny when we went and signed up. They said, yeah, if you don't see a whale, you will get your money back guaranteed. I was like, okay, cool. So worst case scenario, I just get my money back. And within the first minute, there's just like a humpback whale and you saw its fin. I was like, well, okay, they really live up to that expectation. So that was pretty cool.
And I have two questions real quick. One, do you think Juneau could support an NBA team? Two, did you hear the humpback whales yell "Fear the deer" in humpback whale noise? Like, did you see any of that going on while you were there?
I don't think they shouted "Fear the deer," but they definitely, when they were taking a breath, you could see in the mist Bucks and 6. So that can confirm. I don't know if Juneau can support a basketball team. I don't know, maybe a G League team at best, but a lot of the port cities, it was just like a 6-block radius of the downtown, and then after that, you were just in some kind of national forest, basically. But the third city was Skagway, which is as old 1900 gold mining city as you can picture. I'm just surprised there wasn't like some dude wearing like a cowboy outfit playing like a banjo or something outside, but those are all nice. And then we went to Victoria, Canada the last day, and it was weird going to like a civilized city. It was odd. That blew my mind, but it was all good. Enjoyed it. Had way too much buffet, regular style cafeteria food, so I got sick of that, and I'm happy to be back on land. So good week, good relaxing week. If you are someone that likes fishing or hiking, Alaska is the place for you.
Riley, I'm curious, give us your highlight from these past weeks where we haven't potted, main highlight, and I'm curious how much of the finals you watched.
Okay, so I think I watched maybe 30 seconds tops, and that's because I was just surfing through channels and ABC happened to come up while I was clicking through. So I didn't watch pretty much a second of it, which is fine. It's not because I felt jaded or anything, but it just had zero interest after you lose in the finals to one of the teams. And then highlight of the week, or of the week since, man, I got some books from the library, which was cool. Otherwise, I haven't really done much, to be honest. We went back home, went back to the Milwaukee area for a weekend to see family, so that was cool. And then beyond that, just kind of been chilling out, which is useful after the long NBA season and all we dedicate to it, and watching every single game. So not a whole lot, but that's a highlight in its own right.
That's wonderful. I couldn't bring myself to watch the finals, and then I had a buddy in town who wanted to watch the last quarter of Game 5, so I watched that, and then I watched almost all of Game 6, and it felt good because the other part that I love, obviously we all love basketball, but all of like the basketball pods that I would normally listen to, I just was avoiding, and I was kind of running out of stuff to listen to. So that was like the other other issue with me not watching any of it. So I was kind of glad I ripped the Band-Aid off, because for me it was just like I couldn't bring myself to watch. I just felt like sick to my stomach seeing the Raptors doing what they were doing to the Warriors after what happened to the Bucks.
Yeah, I completely just went into full soccer mode the second the Bucks lost, so it's been fantastic.
Yeah, so that was nice to kind of, but to have the break from basketball now has been nice. I went camping, so I like got away from everything, which was pretty fun. I'm a terrible camper. My fiance does everything. So that's as we were arriving, she was like, "All right, well, there are two things we need to do. We need to get the fire ready and set up the tent." And I was like, "All right, I think I can do the tent." And she's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna make you do that, and hopefully it won't go poorly." So then she got the fire ready, and then by the time it was ready, I hadn't even set the tent up yet. She came over and got that done too. So
She was like, Adam, you're supposed to use the bug spray on your skin. Don't spray it right in your mouth, please. Like, that's not how you're supposed to use that.
oh goodness, yeah. So well, at least that was a nice foray into the wilderness, and let's start to make our way back to the Bucks civilization and Buck speak here as we talk about what's been happening in the weeks, and then give a little primer of the week ahead as free agency is right around the corner. So obviously the Bucks only had the 30th pick going into this year's draft. We all knew that. There was a lot of talk for weeks that there might be the possibility that John Horst would end up trading the pick, and lo and behold, he did ship it out, the 30th selection in the draft, and Tony Snell over to the Detroit Pistons for Bucks legend, Badger legend, John Lure, and the amazing versatility in his game that comes with it. But obviously, I think we all know that the main reason they're doing this is to try and free up some cap space for free agency. So just to talk about the specifics before I ship it over to you guys to get your thoughts on the deal. The Bucks are had about, this will free up about $2.2 million more in space, with the difference between Tony Snell's salary and John Lure's, who, of course, is only under contract for this impending season. And so the Bucks would have around 12.2 or like 12.6 million or so in space. If they wind up waiving and stretching John Lure, his salary will become around 3.2 million annually for the next 3 years. So they'd wind up freeing up around 6 more in space this year. But obviously they would have him on the books for the next couple of years. And with Larry Sanders still on there, and I think Spencer Hawes finally comes off this year, we've have a couple candidates who have already been stretched and are eating up dead money on for a team that's getting real close to the luxury tax likely after this offseason. So, Riley, what were some of your initial thoughts when the trade went through, just in terms of if you thought it was savvy of Horst, if you thought it just felt like a necessary evil? What were some of your initial impressions?
A little bit of both, and I'd say the one thing that really jumped out is I definitely thought of, because the news had been that either Snell or Ersan were getting shipped out, or they were, that's who they were shopping. So I thought for sure it would be Ersan, just because, like, as we all know, Tony is prone to having a lot of like no-show games. Maybe he's not no-show in terms of like plus minus, but just a lot of like 10, 15-minute appearances with 0 points, 0 rebounds, 0 assists, 0 shots, like, the typical Tony Snell game. And he's, got paid, I think it was like 10 million, right? Is what he was due this upcoming season. Yeah. So I think it was like, 2 years, and next year was, partially guaranteed for Ersan. So I thought for sure Ersan would be a more enticing, option, and maybe the Bucks were more willing to get rid of Snell. But I think savvy, and I wasn't too upset with the fact that 30th pick got turned into a bunch of second rounders and some cash the next night, or on draft night itself, between the Pistons and the Cavaliers. But you're right that it's just kind of expected that somebody was going to end up being a casualty, whether that be any of the free agents trying to bring them back, like priority wise, or, Ersan or Snell, just to make more room. And so I would give if I was to grade the trade, probably like a B plus, just because it gives Horst more flexibility to be able to bring back the core of the team. And there's no real way for us to get an idea of how impactful this trade will be until once free agency opens and we see who comes back and at what dollar amount, because really everything is going to revolve around that, in my opinion.
Yeah, Kyle, one of the things that was interesting about this is there's certainly been some chatter about the fact that it seems like we essentially traded Tony Snell at the nadir of his value, the lowest point you can sort of imagine for his value, coming off a postseason where he was injured, didn't really play, and sort of any sort of benefit that you might be able to pull out of him when talking to another team was essentially muted. So what did you think about that, just the decision to move on from Tony Snell, especially at this point?
Yeah, I guess it was a little odd, but at the same time, it made sense because Budenholzer is looking for players that can pass, dribble, and shoot. And the only one that Tony Snell can really do well is shoot. He shot 39%, which was one of his lower shooting percentages from three. So if there was going to be someone, I'd rather have been Ersan just because you have Giannis at the four and kind of blocks DJ Wilson, and having him develop more would have been ideal. But at the same time, this was something you needed to do if you want to keep that core that was 2 games away from playing in the NBA Finals. If you're able to bring back Brogdon and Lopez and Middleton and still somehow stay under that tax line, that'd be great. But at the same time, this is kind of what happens when you make these signings on your own free agents, or in case of Ersan, just any free agent. When you do that, when someone that's not a max player right at 1201, these deals are what kind of hurt the Bucks. The Tony Snell signing wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. Same with the Ersan, but it's those margins that, yeah, you're going to save yourself a couple million if you keep John Lure, and if you stretch them, then it, I think, increases to even more, to closer to 6. But the continuation of stretching players is going to hurt Milwaukee more in the long run. But again, if they keep the core and that core gets to the finals and wins the championship, it all doesn't matter. So it's going to be something to evaluate, and I don't know whether the team is confident Dante DiVincenzo and Sterling Brown and Pat Connaughton can fill in for those minutes for Tony Snell, which they did during that playoff run, especially near the end of the season when he got hurt. So maybe that was also a reason why they figured they can part ways with him more than Ersan. But I think there's still another move up Horse's sleeve in trading someone else. I don't know if it's going to be Ersan, but I just feel like there's still another move that he still has to make.
Yeah.
Well, and to kind of just to follow on about the point about, trading Tony at his lowest value, like he's been at pretty much the same, in my opinion. Like we all like him. We all thought he was valuable, like a 40% 3-point shooter. Unfortunately, he didn't take it nearly at the volume we would like, but just kind of like from the moment he signed that contract, he's been at the same low value, both within the team and outside, just because he's an expensive role player who's like, maybe if he was given the opportunity, he'd, be able to contribute a lot more, but I don't think it would have served the Bucks well to like hold on to him for a couple more months to see whether or not he would be able to up his value, just because he's still got 2 years on the contract. It's not like an expiring or anything. And even though he featured in 70 plus games last year, we saw that his minutes dropped. And, if Dante was available, like you're saying, Kyle, if Dante, Pat, and Sterling are available, I think it's reasonable to expect all those guys to get minutes first. So I wouldn't have been a proponent of holding on to him just to see if his value would have gotten better. I think, not sure it could sink any lower, but I doubt there would be an opportunity to maximize that asset any further than they did.
Yeah, I think you make an interesting point about you would have sort of preferred Ersan to try and free up some potential forward space. Kyle, I guess I'm okay with them trading Snell because he seemed, at least out of the two of them, probably definitely the harder contract to move, given that Ersan has that non-guarantee after this coming next season. So basically, this is probably the first round pick the Bucks had this year, it's the 30th pick, but it still has like a slight bit of cachet as a first round pick, is probably one of the few assets that Horst even had left that he could try and offload a contract like that with. So I could see another team honestly just like taking, given how he played last year, I don't know. I don't think $7 million for an expiring contract like Ersan, who could contribute to a team, is egregious. I could see another team taking him without having to add a whole lot of sweetener. Maybe I'm just drinking the Ersan juice, but I guess the other thing it does do is that the Bucks won't have to have a first round picks contract on the books either, so that frees up a little more wiggle room as well. Clearly positioning themselves as well as they can heading into free agency next week, which we'll touch on soon, but. I know you couldn't watch the draft, Kyle, but I know for me, Riley, with the draft night trade already done, and the fact that the Bucks didn't have any picks, I found draft night to be an absolute snooze for as a relative impartial viewer, given that the Bucks didn't have any picks to go.
Yeah, it's like, I like the draft just because it's kind of a cool excuse, especially in years past when the Bucks would be in the lottery. You'd be like, oh, we haven't had to really talk about basketball in like a really long time. So you would have reason to be excited. And my brother and I would usually go out and we would watch the draft somewhere like, your local neighborhood B-dubs or whatever trashy bar place you can imagine we went to. And I agree that it didn't really have much, especially because we knew kind of going in it was unlikely they were going to get a first round pick. And then once you start getting into the second round picks, you're like, okay, maybe they could buy in, but even if they do, it's probably going to be in the 40s or 50s. And, we've seen in the past that Horst and the Bucks in general have been right on top of getting undrafted free agents, kind of scooping them up. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But knowing ahead of time that there was no possibility of that 30th pick or any pick really realistically coming to the team, definitely, deflated the draft extravaganza in my opinion. But, still interesting to follow just because there's a lot of different moving parts around the league that kind of get figured out on draft night and in the immediate aftermath.
Yeah, I guess it is something we'll have to get used to, Kyle, given that the Bucks next year, they're out their second round pick. First round pick is going to convey to, I guess, who got that one now? The Celtics, I guess, have their 2020 pick.
Phoenix moved it to Boston, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we're out our second round pick in 2021. So this, I guess, the draft night won't be the most exciting part of the Bucks offseason for a few years.
True, but then again, the Bucks making deep runs in the playoffs kind of makes up for it.
Yes.
And that's what makes me feel better.
Were you guys just kind of following up on that secondary trade that the Pistons made to the Cavaliers? Would you have been I would have to pull up the exact how many picks got swapped between the two. But would you have preferred something like that, like a whole bevy of future seconds and some cash instead of having to offload Snell's money? Like, I think I understand why people would like to have that just because you get more draft assets and you can either get cheap guys or kind of combine those for other better picks or other better, trade opportunities. But I think how you were saying earlier, Adam, is kind of a necessary evil. But what did you guys make of that trade, if anything?
I guess for me, it's like, I don't care about like a bag of like, I don't care about like a bag of like 4 junky picks that might be in the future. And yeah, we could potentially use them at the trade deadline to pick up new pieces, but like, I think it's going to be really hard for this team to add a whole lot of people. And I think it's more worthwhile to have, try and get your ducks in a row in free agency and just bring the whole gang back than worry about some of those type of assets. And I mean, who knows? Horst has been pretty savvy, at least mid-season, trying to pick up some random assets from other teams. Even if we are going to be pretty cap strapped for the next few years, he did good work extrapolating value out of the Wizards last year. So I guess I'm going to try to put my trust and faith in him that he might be able to find some of those moves on the margins that gives the Bucks a few more marginal assets to work with.
Yeah, I guess with the being second round picks, there is the Malcolm Brogdon or Sterling Brown where they turn out to be good rotation players or starting level players, but most of the time they're going to be guys that are at the end of the bench or don't really have a sustained career or get a second or third contract. So putting a couple of those together to get off the dead money would be preferred compared to a first round pick. But obviously a first round pick is going to be way more valuable than, 4 second round picks, which Cleveland did. And some teams just want to collect on those draft assets so then they can flip those for other draft assets or another player and put that as part of a salary dump. So I'd rather do the 4 second round picks, but at the same time, it didn't hurt seeing those kind of trades happen.
I agree. Okay. Just wanted to get your thoughts on it. That's all.
All right. Do you guys have any other draft night takes? Was anyone here perturbed that the Bucks didn't like try and buy a pick in the second round or something, or try and move back in?
Not really. I mean, I'm always upset when that doesn't happen just because we got billionaire owners with a B. They are super rich, but I kind of go at it from the perspective of like, usually the teams who are selling it, you're in the 50s at that point. And unless you're in love with the guy, you're probably you don't feel that much emphasis to go after it. And then the other end of it is you have to find a team who's willing to sell. And once you start getting down there, that you're kind of getting into a lot of other quote unquote competing teams who might have different rationales for why they'd want to keep like a super cheap second round pick or take a chance or whatever the idea is. So wasn't super duper upset about the fact they didn't get back in, but there wasn't like any sort of scuttle at all. So there must be whoever they pick up as undrafted free agents or they had targets after the fact that they felt comfortable passing on. So not upset, would be cool if they had it, but no big deal.
Yeah, I guess I'm sure they tried purchasing a second round pick, but after the Chicago Bulls sold their pick to the Golden State Warriors for Jordan Bell, I think all the other teams looked at it and like, okay, we don't want to be that team again. Like, we don't want to be the next Chicago Bulls. So maybe teams are just more reluctant to sell them now. But it's if they had done it, cool. But if they didn't, I understand. And half those guys, like Riley said, you can just get as undrafted free agents.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, let's move on to speaking of free agents. Let's move on to a brief free agency primer. I'm not sure how much time I really want to spend on this, given the fact that we'll have answers probably within a week here for our next pod. But before we break down and talk a little bit about some of the news that came out this, not like huge news, but stuff that came out this past week, just that other national writers have written about the Bucks impending free agency. I wanted to get your guys' feel, starting with you, Riley. Just talking about the five main free agent guys, so Chris Middleton, Malcolm Brogdon, Brook Lopez, Nikola Mirotic, and George Hill. How would you rank those guys in terms of your priority for who the Bucks should be bringing back?
Like you're talking just like if all the cap implications and contracts were aside, just like who should be the top targets?
Yes. Yeah.
Man, I think I would still probably go Chris number one. And I know that obviously upsets a lot of people and I get it, but I tend to lean towards the camp of like perfect secondary guy to go with Giannis. After that, it might be Brook. I feel like, and maybe this is sacrilege to say, but it almost feels like we're going into like the exact extreme opposite for Brook Lopez. Like, if the Bucks were able to, or if they had the cap space, it feels like people would be willing to give him the max. And like, obviously he was really important to what the Bucks did on both ends. And it's tough to find a guy who can replicate that. But I feel like his value might be a little overinflated right now. So I would probably put him second, but it would be like a 2A with Malcolm as the 2B right there, just because I think this next contract, health issues aside, you kind of go Malcolm just because he provides a lot of different skills in a lot of different areas with a lot of different lineups, which is super valuable for a combo guard, whatever you want to consider them. And then past that, probably George Hill and Nikola Mirotic would be 4 and 5. But I would say Chris Middleton, clear leader, Brook, Malcolm, kind of flip-flop them depending on your own preferences. And then the other guys we can kind of work around.
What about you, Kyle?
Yeah, I would definitely have Middleton first. And it's not even he's the perfect secondary piece. It's just more who you're going to replace him with. And there still has not been a good answer that I have seen people provide. So because I'd rather pay Chris Middleton near the max than try and find a replacement that's significantly less skilled than him. So he's number one. I actually had Brogdon as number 2, just assuming, and I was shocked about it as well, but it seems like, especially in the Toronto series, he was vitally needed for when Eric Bledsoe was struggling. He was one of the few players that seemed to consistently get shots and was shooting okay, especially in that. I think it was game 3 in the double overtime game. He was really good in that one. But I just think having him just be another ball handler, another player that can make shots and get to the rim is important. I had Brook Lopez third, but it's kind of the same thing with Riley. It's a very slim margin. It's just tough because I don't know how effective, like he was surprisingly healthy this year, but I don't know how long that's going to last. And it's just tough because I feel like you can get another player like Brook Lopez. Not saying that you can get someone better than him, but you can get someone like him. And if he starts commanding too much money, maybe you can turn around and find another shooting big like a Dwayne Dedmon or even Al Horford at this rate and try and get them instead of Brook Lopez. And then I had George Hill fourth, not because I don't think he's a good player. It's just that he was great in the playoffs. He would be great to have on the team, but if you lose him, not the end of the world. And Nikola Mirotic, I think it was clear that it wasn't going to work once that Toronto series happened. So just better to cut your losses. It was worth a shot. It was worth a gamble. I'd say 9 out of 10 times you do that trade again. So Mirotic was just my 5th choice.
Okay, I'm looking something up here, but I was fascinated by. So Riley, you kind of have. You feel like that, like Brogdon and Brook are sort of on a level playing field, but Kyle, you have Brook just a little bit below Brogdon.
Yeah, not by much. Maybe it'd be like a couple, like tenths of a point, or I guess like on a scale, it'd be like Brogdon is a 8.5 and Brook Lopez is an 8.3.
I would say, kind of thinking about it, it's so difficult with Brook because like this is the fallacy that you get into, right? When you're talking about the value of Brook Lopez, like. He does something that's so unique for a center that it is difficult. Like maybe you could find a reasonable facsimile for part of the cost, but how much are you losing in on-court production just because of exactly who Brook Lopez is with like his physical dimensions and how accomplished of a shooter he is and how well he works within the defensive scheme, which muddies the water a ton. It makes it difficult to kind of parse out, like, he enables a lot of the way the Bucks played last season, but if he wasn't there, would Bud and Horst and everybody else be able to figure out some sort of system that functions with like maybe a 5 who isn't as good of a shooter but is okay? Like that's the question we're dealing with, and you kind of look into the abyss with it. Like, it worked really well for one season and it probably would work really well next season as well, but I just find it really tough to find a good value for him. Like, what is a proper amount of money to pay him, and whether or not the Bucks will be able to actually afford his services again next season.
I have an incredibly hard time with Brook Lopez because I think you hit a lot of it right on the head there, Riley, talking about how he seemed to sort of unlock this way that the Bucks were able to play. Look, Chris Middleton is a better player. He's more important, but I almost find like Brook Lopez's his integral very like marrying of his offensive and defensive skills like almost might make him like more important to how the Bucks decide to play than Chris Middleton. I mean, it was weird that basically Chris Middleton didn't really seem to fit into what Coach Budenholzer wanted, right? Like we all thought that he was going to be like the perfect player for Bud. He's just going to be able to shoot stuff away, like fire away from 3, improve his efficiency, and he certainly did that. He played better. But in the end, I mean, a lot of the chatter was that like basically Chris Middleton and Bud had to sort of meet in the middle because they were butting heads over like how Chris Middleton should attack offensively. Whereas Brook Lopez was kind of, I would say, a fulcrum defensively, particularly in terms of allowing Giannis to do the sort of stuff that he did as a help defender, not have to guard the other team's like huge biggest player. Showed, I would say, an incredible preternatural ability defensively to keep guys in the mid-range and like stay between them and show like just enough while also still getting back and blocking an incredible amount of shots at the rim. And then offensively, I think one thing that's kind of underrated about Brook Lopez offensively is just his willingness to shoot. And maybe that's something that like any big man could do under Bud if he taught them. But like we all saw that the Bucks just like basically gave Al Horford carte blanche to fire away from deep in the playoffs. And I think it was Zach Lowe who was talking about it. But like the Bucks are betting that like Al Horford won't want to keep shooting from 3. He'll like eventually balk. And like Brook Lopez will not do that. He will absolutely he no matter what, even if he misses like 8 shots in a row, he's going to still take another shot. And I feel like those sort of qualities are, I don't know if you're going to be able to find that in any other center who's on the market. I'll just give you a few people here, Kyle, just like reading through a few people. So there's like Vucevic, DeMarcus Cousins, Al Horford, obviously you mentioned him, DeAndre Jordan, Jonas Valanciunas, Enes Kanter, Robin Lopez. They have Ed Davis lifted here, JaVale McGee, Dwayne Dedman. That's like, these are just like some of the top 14 or so people on Hoops Hype's free agent centers this upcoming season.
Huh.
What's maybe we can just get Robin Lopez to shave his head, and then for a little bit cheaper he could come on in. That's what's so difficult about Brook is like there are other guys in the league that kind of do what he does, but he's like so uniquely far out ahead of the pack. You might be convincing me live on the air right now, Adam, to switch Brook to number 2 because man, it's so tough. Like, and we do have to remember like we're just a few seasons removed from this guy being like one of the league's dominant interior guys, and he was a max player in New Jersey / Brooklyn, and he was getting paid pretty well to play for the Lakers and was just kind of like misused there. Like, it was total fluke that he ended up in Milwaukee on the deal that he did. And it's unfortunate for us as well because it restricts the ability, obviously, to bring him back at, a reasonable amount without having to do a lot of different, arithmetic to it. But I do not envy Horst and company whatsoever trying to balance all these different, needs and wants and everything like that. We talked about it, even like you could see it coming halfway or even early in the season. You're like, God damn it. There's going to be a lot of stuff to try and figure out, like, who do you bring back? How do you figure it out? So I do not envy him at all. And it will be quite a task, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, as much as like, I think I think Brook is like squarely number 2, might even be like 1A, 1B with Chris Middleton for me. You know, Malcolm Brogdon clearly has like a lot of suitors. It feels like he has been, at least, I mean, they've mentioned him on the Low Post a couple times this last week. I think Zach Lowe mentioned just on the one with Gavoni and Bobby Marks, he said that like the Bucks are, you know, John Horst is like, you know, backing up the Brinks trucks, like ready for other teams to offer Malcolm Brogdon probably an offer sheet in the realm of 20 million. And it's sort of a question of at what number the Bucks are going to balk. So Kyle, like, how do you sort of square away this idea of this like really versatile player with some injury red flags who, like you said, was, you know, really important in the playoffs to this team, suddenly vaulting up into like the level of like one of the higher paid 2 guards in the league?
Yeah, and that's why when it was like, look, if the cap works out and you can bring everyone back, I had Brogdon as number 2. But if we have to consider the salaries, I would maybe put Brogdon as low as 4. Look, I don't know. It's tough because how can I really justify, like, I guess the number I would say is anything over 15 million for 4 years for Malcolm Brogdon. That's when I start getting a little anxious, a little hesitant to say, yes, bring him back. So that's the weird part. It's just like, he's a good player, but I mean, if it's anywhere close to 20 million, the Bucks have to balk at that. It's one of those where it's kind of like Tyler Johnson over in Miami. You can keep him and have that contract, but the second he starts underperforming, that contract looks worse and worse and worse as the years go on, and then the value goes lower and lower and lower. So it's ugly though.
I mean, if he gets paid 20 million, it's like, he's getting paid more than Eric Bledsoe. I mean, right? Like,
it's so crazy to think about. Oh my God.
Like I think it's absolutely like a little crazy to think about. I mean, then it would like, I still think Eric Bledsoe's thing is a good deal. I'm probably like I know I perished on the Tony Snell hill this past week. I'm probably going to die on the Eric Bledsoe hill. That might
join
be
the club.
I just know I'm going to stay on it. There was, you know, it was tough to die on the Tony Snell hill this past week. I've loved him for years, and no longer. I won't like you as a part of the Pistons, but the amount of discussion that we could have about how to square all this stuff away honestly feels like never ending. Just thinking about the idea that like Malcolm Brogdon is going to be $20 million a year player. It seems kind of crazy to me, but that like might be what the Bucks, if the Bucks' hands are forced, that's what they'll do.
I want to see somebody actually offer that kind of deal, though. Like, it's all well and good for Mark Cuban and the Mavericks to keep throwing all this, because it feels like, to me, almost all of this is exclusively coming out of Dallas. And that's not just because some random dude who's a Cowboys expert broke a lot of Bucks news this past week for whatever reason. But, like, part of the upside, and you're right that 20 million a year for Malcolm does feel bordering on the ridiculous, even though I love Malcolm and obviously he should get paid as much as he's able to get, just because this probably is one big deal. But I think the beauty, as long as the Bucks don't bid against themselves, and I really don't think they're even able to, just because of the way that restricted free agency works, like, just wait to see a team prove that they're willing to put that out there, because whatever team it is, they have to be content with Malcolm as being like the get. And like, they have to be convinced that he's going to be the guy that gets them over the top over the course of that 3 or 4 year contract, because they're going to have to lock up their cap space for 72 hours. We still have the right to match, et cetera, et cetera. So all these things are artificially, should in theory kind of drive his value down, plus the injury stuff, plus the like concerns about athleticism. He's like okay defender, but not a great defender. Like, there's a whole bunch of different factors that could still put this value all over the place. So as ludicrous as it is kind of talking about it in theory, I'm not going to freak out until we actually see offer sheet come across the line. Like, okay, wow, they're really going to give him 90 million or whatever, like $80 million over the forthcoming season. Like that would just be madness to me. But I don't know, maybe Mark Cuban doesn't care about money.
I was going to say, there are plenty of inept franchises that could do it, like Chicago or Dallas or the Knicks in a panic buy, or the Washington Wizards, because no one's running that team at the moment. Like, there's enough franchises out there that could be dumb enough to do it. Like, they could decide, you know what, we don't care. We're going to throw this money at someone to make it to save face, or because they think this guy's going to be the one. So don't doubt the ineptitude of NBA franchises.
But then it's like, Go for it. What was that, Adam?
Or they want to screw us. I mean, like isn't that what the Nets did? I think with like Alan Crabb, they signed him to that offer sheet, screwed Portland out of that. I think Portland signed Enes Kanter to an offer sheet a couple years ago and forced Oklahoma City's hand to match it. I don't know. I mean, we're like pretty close to the Kings now. Yeah. So I mean, I could see a team potentially doing that to try and screw us over.
Yeah, and it's triply difficult. Like I appreciate that we're having this conversation because it's helping me like cement all the trouble, because I've been kind of living in la la land for the past couple months just with how good the season was. But it's triply difficult because Malcolm is, again, unique in that because the Bucks have his bird rights, like he's the only guy that we could go up and over the cap to bring back. So like all the incentive, you're right, is in other teams' hands to be like, here, we'll pay you 4 years, $150 billion. Like, good luck, Bucks. Like, and if he walks, I mean, you're screwed. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, how do you kind of troll around and hope either Sterling kind of step up, or you can kind of go by committee to fill, or
that's when you go for Bojan.
Yeah, lots of Bojan minutes. He's going to be commanding a Malcolm Brogdon level contract as well. So I don't know if we're in the market for him, but it's, I don't know. It's hard. I don't know what the value to bring back Malcolm is. I think he has a lot of value. I think he does a lot of unique things that papers over, whether it be the starting lineup or the, working with the subs or whatever it is. I think he's versatile. And so I'm curious what the market will be. And I think the Bucks will match no matter what it is, but it's probably going to be a poison pill type contract that they're going to have to kind of go for.
Yeah. What are you guys' feelings on Chris Middleton? I'm curious about this. I want him back. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think we all would want him back. I'm honestly fine like paying him somewhere close to the max. I think that's just what he's probably going to get. But like, Kyle, what do you put our odds at to try and get him back? Are you like at like a 100% right now?
I'm at a 95%.
Okay.
I feel like unless the Bucks really screw it up and give him a lowball offer that just pisses him off to the point where he's like, I'm not even going to bother negotiating with you guys, I think Milwaukee's going to offer him something close to the max. I think Chris Middleton would want to take it and stay. And this was my feeling even before the Matt Velasquez article came out. So those two things combined because he's always said he wants to do what's best for his family. And I don't know if up and moving is the best thing for his family. I think him being in Milwaukee for a while and maybe having that access to the healthcare that he might, I don't know where he would get anywhere else. He's kind of familiar with it and just showing, and I think his role in the team as well. I would say 95% likely that he stays, and I want the Bucks to sign him, and I want them to pay as close to the max as they can, because again, who are you going to replace him with that's better? And the answer is nobody.
Yeah. I'm interested because like the Pacers were one of these. It feels like he's sort of been linked to a couple teams now. I think like the Mavericks maybe, and then I think there was an article midseason maybe by Zach Lowe saying the Pacers had some interest in him, which them like accepting TJ Warren's contract into cap space makes me think that they're probably definitely out of it. But where are you standing at it now, Riley?
Yeah, you're right that like all the other teams, like it's weird because Chris is not like the top tier free agents. I would say like he might command a max, but again, you're looking at like, okay, how many teams are out there that have the space? Like maybe the Lakers, now that they totally bungled the whole trade and like the cap space availability, unless they're able to get somebody to, get a gentleman's agreement to wait around until the 30th of July for, a full max or whatever it is. So maybe that would be a danger, but I tend to agree with Kyle that it just feels like the team and him as well, they've kind of already prepared the grounds for some sort of agreement to come around. And what I'm most curious, maybe not so much that they'll come to an agreement, because I believe they will, but I'm curious what the years will look like. Like, is he going to be looking for the full 5 years as much as he can get, or like close to as much as he can get? Or is he maybe looking at like, okay, we'll get paid over this contract, and maybe he could do like a Paul George. I don't know if he would have reason to do something where like he gets a player option or the opportunity to kind of get out of it if he wanted to a little bit earlier to get one more payday. So I think there's a lot of different factors that it's difficult to determine if he'll go for a full max, but I tend to believe he'll be back, and I tend to believe it'll be at a discount, but not nearly enough where like when you're looking at the top line numbers, you're like, wow, that's a really tangible amount less. Like it'll be just a couple million. I doubt anything more than that.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that too. And I mean, who knows? Maybe they'll give him like a if he takes a little less money, they'll give him like a 5th year, if possible, like a player option or something. Sort of like
You're right. You're right, though,
investment.
that I didn't forget, but you are right that it was strange that him and Bud didn't seem to not get along, but they just had different philosophical, ideas about how basketball should be played or how they could fit in. And like, it was a little strange that we have this guy like we've talked about for years, like, Chris, you're this amazing 3-point shooter. Like, you're an awesome shooter. And yes, you do a lot of mid range, but don't give in to the Kobe brain and you could be just an astounding player. But it seems odd that he chose this season, or like, the way that the season was playing out, and he still just couldn't really work it that well with Bud. Like, he had to be met halfway, like you said. I find that a little bit strange and curious how that might affect his decision to come back, or kind of, where the negotiations would go if there's still philosophical disagreements about how best he could be used as a newly minted all-star and, max free agent and all these different things. I think that's all very interesting as well.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating, Kyle, the fact that like Bud obviously has a rep as a guy who empowers his players. And felt like we didn't hear like any real issues from Eric Bledsoe like this all year. Like, it's not like the Bucks, he was like conceding some sort of his type of offense to fit within what Bud wanted. I mean, occasionally, apparently, like in the Houston games, he like just did what he wanted though, and took what Bud wanted to do in terms of shading Harden one way, and he like just set the whole tone for the defense in those games. But it's interesting to think about that fact, and then think about the fact that like Riley was saying, that Chris Middleton both Chris Middleton and Giannis were like the guys who kind of had to work their way into what it was that Bud might have wanted them to do.
Yeah, and I think part of that is because with Jason Kidd, Giannis and Chris were able to do whatever they liked, since there wasn't really an offensive structure or offensive game
Since
plan.
there was no coach.
That too. So because of those circumstances, it was easier for them to kind of freelance and do whatever they liked, because they knew that they can kind of get away with it with Kidd. While with Budenholzer, it's more of this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. And it's kind of just straight to that point. There's not really much room for improvisation. And I think Budenholzer was a little bit more lax as the season went on, and understood his players more. And I think that will continue. They'll still have their offensive scheme, the general scheme, but I think there are some audibles that Chris or Giannis could call if they feel like it's the best fit. I mean, we saw it with Budenholzer allowing Chris to take more mid-range jumpers, and I think that kind of got Chris going a little bit. But I just think the familiarity between the two is really going to help, and I think it's going to allow them to kind of have a give and go type of relationship with how they want to approach the offense.
Well, and kind of doubling just one last quick point, I think there is value in having Chris there as this different look on offense, because, that we saw in the Toronto series and other parts, whenever the Bucks struggle, it's just like, we have zero clue what else to do out here. Like, this is the system. Like, this is what we do. If it's not working, then we've got a problem. And Chris does provide value in that regard, in that he gives you, even if it's just like really ugly ISO sets from the wing with like 3 dudes on them, like, in theory, he gives you a different option if things aren't working. Now, you also have to have Bud, who has to be willing to kind of go to that more often if things aren't working as originally planned. But I think that too has a value all its own, and part of why keeping Chris is so important, because he's able to thrive in both ideally the way Bud would like him to play, and in other forms as well, if necessary.
Well, I said we wouldn't talk too long about it, but I think we had some excellent conversations there.
Wait, one final thing.
Yes.
I know we kind of talked about George Hill and Nikola Mirotic. Do we have any further thoughts on those two guys? I know the top 3 are like the main core that we're talking about, but do you have any strong feelings, Adam, on those two guys?
I'm fine with Mirotic sort of getting kicked away. I mean, I think he probably is going to get an unfair rap in Milwaukee, first time in Milwaukee. I mean, yeah, he didn't play well. He was just in a terrible slump, and at the absolute worst time for him to go into it. But I think he's probably still a pretty quality player, and I think the gamble still was certainly worth it. George Hill, I mean, if there's a chance to get him back, I don't think his value can be understated, just especially considering how important he was, particularly in the playoffs when he had to fill in some of the creation role that while Malcolm Brogdon was out. just having like a competent point guard to go in and have a little bit of playmaking, some good shooting. He had a really down year shooting from three with the Bucks in the regular season last year, so there's some regression probably coming there for him next season. So I would love it if he was like, yeah, I don't need to make much money. I'm just going to be a ring chaser now, and decided to stay with the Bucks. And I think it honestly would be kind of a pretty tough loss in the backcourt if the Bucks aren't able to find some crazy way to keep him. So I guess those are my closing thoughts on him.
Tend to agree with both of those.
Yeah, I don't see Mirotic coming back. Hill, I think, will come back. It's just a matter of, do they kind of waive him, give him that $1 million, and then kind of rework a deal? I can see that happening. I don't see why Hill wouldn't at least be open to it. And I think the Bucks would love to have him back.
Agreed. Well, we'll have a lot more answers in a week, and we'll certainly be talking about that, and could be a really differently looking Bucks team next week. I think we all think it might be relatively similar to what we looked at this past season, but who knows? It's free agency. Anything can happen. And speaking of anything that can happen, I think it's time, guys. It's been a while, but it's time to return to our favorite segment. It's time for Dante's Inferno. And I want to start Dante's Inferno with this absolute fire quote from Jon Horst saying that
it is like 3 paragraphs long. It is quite a doozy. Here we go.
Look, I'm going to read the whole thing because I think it's important, because we haven't gotten a lot of Dante content. So here we go. Quote. Oh, hat tip Eric Name, and this was from the pre-draft presser that Horst gave. So here we go. Dante's been in here every day. He's looking really good right now. He's definitely healthy. We're going to be really cautious with it. We're not going to push him out into Summer League. I think Summer League in some ways is to understand what guys can and can't do, or to give them different opportunities that they haven't seen. Dante was pretty good for us last year when he was healthy. So I don't know about the evaluation piece of it. I do think Sterling Brown and DJ are going to play. That's more about understanding what their roles are going to continue to be on our team, and continue to put them in those situations where they can be more of the guy, more of the facilitator, more of the playmakers. So I think those guys are going to play a little bit on our Summer League team. And Dante, I think, will be kind of a game time decision. But he's doing really well. And guys, what Jon Horst is saying is that Dante is too good for Summer League. Am I right?
Basically.
And Sterling and DJ are total scrubs compared to him.
I couldn't believe that quote when I saw it. I mean, it's a useful excuse if they're unsure about Dante's health at this point, even though one line in there points to something a little bit different, maybe where he says he's definitely healthy.
Yeah, that was the fact that was sentence number 2, and it was so deliberate. Definitely making me pause just a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I was kind of like, what? You didn't have to say he's definitely healthy. Like, I wasn't doubting he was going to be healthy or he was recovering. You didn't need to throw that in there, Horst.
It reads like a hostage quote. Like he is definitely okay. He's definitely healthy. Also, I mean, okay, I think we can all agree, and maybe we don't all agree, but I think for sure Dante is not healthy if he's not going. And also, even if he was healthy, what the hell did he prove last year? Like, he did stuff. We all well, okay, so we all like Dante. We all know he can do stuff. He shot 10% from 3, it felt like. And like, there's just, again, he did stuff that was great, but he played like, here, how many games did he play? 40? Wasn't even, no, it was 27 games. Come on, Horst. We're not stupid. Come on, man. He hasn't proved anything. Clearly, he's not healthy. Clearly, he was not shooting as well as we expected. Yes, he could do stuff, but I think the audacity of that quote is, I mean, Horst's nose had to have been 30 feet long after he was done saying that. Like, come on, Pinocchio, let's go.
God.
And that's all I got to say about Dante. It's just, what did he prove? Like, everything from top to bottom was just really strange. And I feel like it's got to be some smoke screen in case they're trying to get Dante moved out. Like that.
No,
right? Not well. I know it hurts. Doesn't DJ's Inferno sound just as good though? Like,
no. I was legitimately thinking about buying the DiVincenzo jersey just to eat all the crow. The yellow one. I wanted to get the yellow DiVincenzo jersey with the shorts, just to show that I've changed from the draft post-draft pod last year.
Oh man.
Yeah, Kyle, I mean, what do you think is going on? I mean, look, all right, we're not a doctor, but I think it's time to talk about like how he had a really weird rookie year where he had that groin or hamstring issue that kept him out for part of summer league, I thought, or like he had to pack it in early. And then during the season, he had that heel bursitis, sat out for a long time, came back for only like, what was it, a week and a half, and then they just shut him down again. And then he's still out now. I mean, from everything I could tell with this issue, it's typically like a 3 to 4 month recovery, at least based on the little stuff that I read. But I mean, now it kind of seems like it might just be a chronic thing with him.
I think it was more he never fully recovered when he got back. Because if you think about it, when he came back, the team was kind of low on point guards. I think Brogdon was out. George Hill was out. There wasn't, I mean, hell, they were relying on Tim Frazier and Trayvon Duval at points to be like the backup point guard. So I think he was never fully healthy is my guess, at least with the heel injury. The groin just seemed like that was a weird muscle thing. Maybe he just wasn't used to the intensity of the NBA season, even if it was summer league. But I think I'm a little concerned about the heel, but at the same time, I'm going to chalk it up to he was never fully healthy when he came back. And then when the team started getting healthier again, they decided to shut him down. And because Budenholzer didn't think he was going to play in the playoffs at all. So why bother having him, practice and go through all this stuff and have him sit on the bench when we can shut him down, let him rehab at his own pace, and then you still have the off season. But I'm also not a doctor, so I don't know.
It's sad. I mean, especially just based on our last conversation. If Malcolm Brogdon does walk, I mean, it's like our wing rotation is basically now Dante DiVincenzo, Pat Connaughton, and Sterling Brown. So he could have a far more outsized role than he had last year, even though he started last year as the first guy off the bench, right?
Yeah, he had a pretty big role right from the get-go. And I think that was partially Bud trying to because there was a lot of scuttlebutt, quote unquote, about him being or Dante being a Bud pick. So I think it was like, well, we're just going to make it work. Like, and I don't know. This kind of felt hubristic that he got that many minutes right from the get-go.
Oh, that is something I didn't miss this year, is deciding whether the coach or the GM made the selection. Since that's been like every Bucks draft selection for the past like however many years, besides maybe the Wilson pick.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I hated the Dante pick from the get-go, and then you're right that he had a really weird season, and like I'm not gonna go on the record and say I'm out on Dante right now because I think it would be too premature, but like if he's not shooting well, I'm not sure how much other value he brings. Like, if this is a chronic issue, the way that he played last year, like it seemed every rebound, one, he was the only guy who went for offensive rebounds. And two, when he did, he almost died every single time. Like he did not care how many dudes were beneath him, how many dudes were in the way. He was going to sky up. And even if he like broke his arm in half, he was going to try and get the rebound, which was admirable, but probably not conducive for a heel that was freaking torn in half. And it's just, I agree, like the ideal of Dante, which I have no freaking clue what the hell that is. Like, it's just a shooting guy who does a lot of other stuff. Like, that's valuable, but will he ever get there? I have no idea. And will he get there quick enough to be a big contributor next season after essentially what was a lost rookie year? I don't know. And if he's not going to play any sort of summer league, does that mean he's actually healthy? I'm going to guess no, but maybe he is. But what does that mean? There's a lot of murkiness around Dante right now. And I don't know if it's smokescreen for moving him somewhere else as part of a trade, or there's just actually genuinely like, maybe like you said, Kyle, maybe they messed up the rehab earlier and now they really want to nail it down tight so he's ready for next season. So I don't know what to make of it. I'm not going to say I'm out on him, but definitely not auspicious circumstances right now.
Well, when you're in the Inferno, a smoke screen is something you'll probably enjoy.
Yeah, that's what you expect.
Yeah.
Wow, that was a hell of a transition.
And all I have to say is that John Horst gets the last word on the matter. Quote, he's definitely healthy. Remember that, folks.
Hey,
wink,
Adam,
wink.
you got to get that one. If you don't get the Dante jersey, just get a custom jersey that says he's definitely healthy on the back.
Oh goodness.
Man,
Okay.
great.
Well, let's talk really briefly about this crappy summer league team the Bucks are going to field. So we've got,
How dare you, sir?
dude.
Come
I
on
mean, okay.
now.
Well, think of last year. Like, I think one of the few reasons it was watchable. DJ Wilson looked like absolute garbage. Christian Wood basically made it watchable. If anyone else remembers this, Christian Wood and Sterling Brown and Dante never making a shot. But I mean, it was basically Sterling Brown and Christian Wood. Christian Wood is now with the Pellies. So basically, the roster that we have so far is DJ Wilson and Sterling Brown, both likely playing per Horst. Third-year players don't typically play in summer league. Maybe second-round picks, but it feels like like a first-round pick like Wilson. I don't know if they typically play in summer league. Does that track for you guys?
I do not think so, but I think there's probably a stigma around that, and I am totally like against that stigma. Like I do not mind whatsoever. Now, this is that part of Horst's gigantic diatribe about DJ and Dante and Sterling. I believe in that they want those two guys to have a bigger role and have experience, kind of whether it be running the offense or having like a bigger load on the offensive or defensive end. So I totally get it. I don't mind it whatsoever. I don't look at it like as an indictment on those two guys because I mean, DJ, maybe you could still have questions like, maybe you probably could go to summer league for a third year, but I think Sterling over his rookie in the second year, he kind of showed that he has, he's putting it together, and I don't mind them going whatsoever. But I do believe you are correct in that third year players going to summer league again is definitely a bit outside the park, but we have like two other dudes on the roster, so I understand.
Yeah, I was gonna say, who else are you gonna put on the summer league roster that is on the Bucks besides those two and maybe Bonzi?
Yeah, it's tough. So I'll run through the rest, and I'll kick it to you, Kyle, to see who the guy that you're most intrigued with, just based on the scouting we've all clearly done to prep for this podcast. So Fletcher McGee, Wofford sharpshooter, all-time 3-point NCAA leader, notable for. I believe I read one tweet that said against upper level competition, he shot like 22% or something from three. Don't quote me. And he missed like every single jumper in their NCAA tournament game. Dalton Holmes, who just tweeted out like a weird 3D render of his face. And
it was really strange. It was really weird.
Odd, but it's apparently like the D2 player of the year, like 6'8" forward. I don't know. Rajon Tucker, I watched one tweet. He dunked over two people. Matt Farrell, he played with Rashad Vaughn with the Delaware Blue Coats last year. That's intriguing. Thanasis Antetokounmpo, related to Giannis. Luke May, played at UNC. I honestly could only think of Sean May, the old UNC forward that beat the Badgers in the 05 tournament. I think Bonzi Colson might be on the roster. I don't know if we have that confirmed yet, but any of those guys stick out to you, Kyle?
Well, Luke May looks like a dude that isn't that good. Like he looked like a dude. I remember when North Carolina won a title, Luke May was just like killing everyone. I was like, who is this dude? He doesn't look like someone that just like walks on the court, is dominating at North Carolina. Like he would be someone that I expect to dominate at like a Big Ten school or maybe even like a mid-level Big 12. Like he's just like this dude with like his beard. I was like, I don't believe you're an actual college player. What is this?
Dude, he definitely looked more like a pizza delivery guy than a basketball player. That's 100% facts. You're so right, Kyle.
If he played hockey or baseball, I would believe that more than if he played basketball. So Luke May is going to be interesting. But I'm kind of interested in Dalton Holmes, not just for the 3D render, but he seems like, a D2 player of the year, can shoot the ball. I'm curious to see what more there is to him. Like Fletcher McGee, I think we all know who he is. He's a Wofford sharpshooter. If he hits shots, great. If he doesn't hit shots, he's not good. I don't know about someone that can dunk over two people. I'm still got Joe Alexander issues that are.
Oh, did you guys see? Did you see that Joe Alexander? The rumor mill that he's back in Milwaukee and he's going to be part of the summer league team as well.
Yeah, that team's gonna
really cool.
Okay, well, I just figured I'd toss that in there.
Yeah, so that's going to be someone else, but yeah, I guess Dalton Holmes was my pick. But Luke Mays, I'm just going to sit there and be like, how are you still here? You should not. I don't know how you're here, and how good are you?
Riley, do you care about Thanasis being on the team at all?
I was gonna say the most interesting to me is the wide out in the open nepotism going on with Thanasis. Like I don't mind, but I would be shocked if he's not gonna be like the number 2 off or like option on offense, or maybe even the number 1, just to like give him a lot of shine and do a solid for Giannis. Like I mean, obviously that's what's going on here right now. Like it doesn't really interest me. I am super duper skeptical and do not believe he will end up with the Bucks organization. I think it's just doing a solid for him. So he's interesting only insofar as I'm curious how much shine he's going to get versus all these other guys. Like, do any of these other guys have a realistic chance of making the roster? If not, is it just going to be the Thanasis show with some DJ cameos? Like, that's a wrench in the whole thing. Otherwise, the other guys you kind of talked about, Rajon Tucker, kind of sort of, you said there's the dunking, but he's like an undersized guy who's really explosive and athletic, which, that's kind of a blank slate that you can imagine him doing all sorts of different things at the NBA level. But maybe just if any of these guys prove good enough to have a 2-way contract, that would be great. Otherwise, I do not expect any of them to stick around any further than the summer league.
I'm interested to see who the new coach will be. Taylor Jenkins was the coach last year. Of course, he's now with Memphis. Hopefully, I'll wish him best of luck down there. Got pretty sweet players in the draft, actually. I was really jealous. That's probably going to be a fun League Pass team. And then, we'll have to see who else rounds out the roster. I am betting my money on a Wisconsin Badger legend who would be a perfect fit.
Khalil Iverson is not a perfect fit, Adam. Give it up.
Russell Wilson cannot be a 3-sport player, okay? He's already got baseball and basketball. Get over it.
Hillary Knight is too good at hockey to give up a career to play basketball, okay?
Here's all I'm saying. As I was going through the archives of Bucks Summer League teams, I was reminded that Mike Bruzewicz, the redheaded ginger who really has no business even playing, sniffing.
Speaking of guys that does look like they should be good at basketball.
We have the mold already.
It's going to be Ethan Happ, and it's going to, every time he scores a basket, I'm going to just tweet at Riley about how good Ethan Happ is and how he's just a clear guy who can succeed in the big leagues now.
There's only one slight problem with that. Ethan Happ signed with the Chicago Bulls Summer League squad.
Wait, when?
This happened literally, it was reported on Madison.com 11 hours ago.
Oh, okay. Well, I put the outline together on Saturday.
So I don't think that's going to happen. So again, Khalil Iverson is not an option.
This is horrific news for me. Well, I guess I'll be watching the
greatest day of my life.
I guess I'll be watching the Chicago Bulls Summer League team.
Riley, you say that now, and if the Bucks play the Chicago Bulls in Summer League and Ethan Happ drops like 20 and 10, you're gonna hate every moment of it.
Well, I'm gonna hate every moment on social media where dudes from Northern Idaho is like, "Dude, freaking love Wisconsin, bro. You got to get Ethan on the squad. He's got the perfect post game. Come on, man."
Okay, well then, if Mike Bruzewicz is still playing, I think he might fit on the team. Bring him back. Sometimes they bring back those like 35-year-old people to play in Summer League. Those are always fun.
I'll be honest, I'm genuinely shocked the team doesn't do more pandering to like UW, Green Bay, like Milwaukee dudes, Madison. Like I'm shocked that hasn't already happened. Like if it was still the Cole era, I'm sure that would be full blown. Like it would be just the Wisconsin D1, D2 All-Stars is what it would be, like undrafted All-Stars. It would be the Summer League team.
Oh.
And you know what? They perform just as well as the team always has, which is win one game every year and then just look awful the rest of the time.
That's what I was going to say. They're going to win one game and that's it. Win a game.
Well, sorry, I was just going to say the schedule real quick. We can tune into that awful team. July 5th, starting against Philly at 2:30 Central. July 6th, Atlanta, 4 o'clock Central. July 8th, they're facing Toronto at 7 Central. And we're facing China, the country of China, on July 10th at 10 Central.
I am not watching that. No. You cannot pay me enough to tweet that game. No.
Yeah, we're probably going to get freaking clowned on by China, guaranteed. It's going to be some Cold War-ish up in this. It's going to be.
Okay,
I don't know what you're talking about. Based off of my findings in Juneau, Alaska, we're pretty close with Russia, so we might be able to work it out with China.
It's true. It's true.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out if it'll say who the rosters are yet.
Well, here's the thing. While you're looking that up, I think really the key to how far this team goes is whether or not Travis Trice is here for the 30th year in a row. I think everything revolves around his presence, and I'm curious if there are going to be any other holdovers, because it feels like the past couple, at least the past 2 seasons, the summer league teams have been a lot of the same guys. Like Jordan Barnett was there a couple years, and how much of it is Wisconsin herd guys that are going there. Like there's a lot of different factors that I'm not sure how many other dudes we're going to add besides who we've already heard.
Yeah,
who aren't already in the organization, that is.
Yeah, you make a good point. I guess I'm interested to see if Yijian Lian plays on Team China.
Gets his final revenge, puts up 60 and 30.
Just absolutely beast DJ Wilson with his buff pod. Wait, no. If Joe Alexander plays and those two go up against one another, won't that's like appointment viewing?
No,
the world might collapse. The world might collapse in on itself if that happens.
I'm staying off of Twitter if that happens.
Oh,
I've been doing pretty well at having a Twitter hiatus from the Milwaukee Bucks and anything basketball related for some time. I might have to continue that if EGI Leon is facing Joe Alexander in a summer league game in 2019.
Oh,
I feel like this is a productive podcast. We got a lot done.
Yeah, we really covered all our bases here. All right, well, I don't know, anything else to add for before we go away?
Nope. I would just have an appeal to everybody, no matter who gets paid what next week. Try not to kill each other online. We are all just basketball fans at the end of the day, and even if Chris Middleton is making a lot of money, it's not the end of the world. We'll figure it out.
It's also not our money.
That too. Yep. Remember that it's our billionaire money, not our money.
Well, that'll about do it. So with that plead for civility next week, appreciate that, Riley. And thank you to everyone who always listened to us. Appreciate. Hope you didn't mind the hiatus. I think we were all sort of ready. It felt like Bucks Twitter and everyone was sort of ready for a brief break after that tough loss. But we'll be back sporadically. We'll probably talk after free agency, check in on Summer League, and then we'll probably take a little longer hiatus. But thanks as always for listening. We're always looking for feedback too. I think we're all going to be talking about this summer. Maybe have a slightly revamped show for next season. Same host, but we might try and do little stuff a little differently. But thanks as always for listening, and talk to you again soon.